And welcome to the Answers 42 podcast. I am your host, Dan Wetstein. I was trying to set up a really special show for y'all and have multiple guests so we can talk about the training camp and trade deadline. Unfortunately, it seems to be the day of family emergency. So, all the best to Quinn and Santiago, my boys for life. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all trying to come on. I completely understand. Family, life gets in the way, my guys. So, unfortunately, all of y'all are just stuck with me. So let's go ahead and let's jump in. I still got some fun topics for y'all to talk about. Please hit me up in the comments. As you see, I don't have anybody else to talk to. So if you don't talk to me, I'm just a talking head. So let's go ahead and get going. First up, NFL training camp look ahead. This is one of the most hopeful times of the year between the NFL training camp getting started and just hope and belief abound across NFL franchises and their fan bases. It's a new start. Everybody's 0-0. We all kind of know who's going to be a contender, who's not. But every single year, there's always that worst to first team, that team that comes out of nowhere. Last year, it was kind of like the Lions and the Dolphins really kind of taking that extra step nobody was ready for them to take. So it's nice to see those teams do it. Who's going to be that this year? Who's the team that's overhyped, like my Denver Broncos were last year, obviously way overhyped. They were supposed to be Super Bowl contenders, and they barely won 5 games. So there's always those ends of the spectrum. Plus, you have the MLB trade deadline coming up in just a couple of days. The MLB trade deadline is ending. The deadline, obviously, is Tuesday, August 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So all trades must be in before then, and we're getting down to the 11th hour, which is usually when things go crazy. We've already had a lot of craziness. We've seen guys like Max Scherzer and Lucas Giolito being sent across the U.S. to a contender. So there's so much more that can be done. Some of the big names we thought were going to go, Shohei, Nolan Arenado, etc., those guys are being kept by their teams because one reason or the other, whether they're close to being a wild card or playoff contender, or they're just not willing to completely retool and sell off every piece in the case of the Cardinals. So all kinds of fun and hopeful things to talk about and speak about. So let's go ahead and jump into the first topic we have here, which is NFL training camps. And are the Jets one of those hyped up super teams that are set for failure? This is along the lines of what happened to the beloved Broncos in my household and many of those in Broncos country. It's crazy to see this hype train coming, and for back-to-back years, the centerpieces of the hype happen to be Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers. Last year, it was the fact that the Broncos weren't able to get Aaron Rodgers after hiring Hackett and then immediately pivoting to Russell Wilson, who they were able to get again. I think was an absolute steal. Regardless of what happened in year one, this was a 10-year plan. When you get a Russell Wilson at age in his early 30s, you're looking at least close to a decade worth of planning. So 1 year out of that, if that's the case, we're all hoping here in Broncos country it's only 1 year, but you never know. Sometimes players just fall off the end of the map. I don't think it's Russell Wilson, but hey, weirder things have happened. But back to the Jets and them being super hyped, despite the fact that they are running an offense that is being run by a man that had one of, if not the worst offenses we have ever seen a year ago, with a terrible offensive line and a running game that could never really get going, period. Those are the things I see as a possibility of happening in New York. I know a lot of people are going to say that I'm just hating on Rodgers in New York because the Broncos weren't able to get Rodgers. I have never been a fan of the Broncos trading for Rodgers. I was never a fan before they got Russell, and I'm definitely not a fan of the thought of the process, because at the best you're going to get 2 years, maybe 3 out of Aaron Rodgers. He's just that old. The man's pushing 40. He's almost there. Yes, he has played at a very high level very recently, but I do believe he is on that decline. Last year, I do not believe was a fluke in the way that I believe that Russell's off year was a fluke. Yes, Rodgers had a better year than Russell, but he also wasn't as hurt as Russell, and he had a better offensive line, better weapons, better running game, and a better defense. It's apples and oranges when you're trying to compare Aaron Rodgers having an off year with a very good team and no real injuries that we know of, no major injuries that we know of, and Russell Wilson, who had an atrocious offensive line, an atrocious coaching staff, one that led the league in pre-snap penalties on both sides of the ball, simply because they couldn't do the bare minimum basic coaching fundamental of getting a play call in on time, so that way it can get called in the huddle, the players can get out of the huddle and to the line in time before, again, a pre-snap penalty. And a lot of that had to do with poor offensive line play, a running game that went completely stagnant after Javonte Williams went down with injury, and Melvin Gordon decided to have the butteriest of fingers ever to ever touch a football majority of the time for any NFL franchise. I've never seen a player get so many chances after fumbling in so many crucial moments, but they kept feeding him the rock until, I mean, honestly, they cut him way too late. Good luck, Baltimore. Good luck on that Melvin Gordon. Good thing y'all have a whole bunch of other backs in front of him. He's not, I mean, it's just done and over with. Melvin Gordon needs to move on. But that's a lot of what's happening in New York. They have a poor offensive line. I mean, they have some possibilities of being okay, but it reminds me so much of what the Broncos had on their offensive line last year, where their left tackle was potentially Pro Bowl or potentially bust, depending upon the day, year, week, time, whatever. Their interior offensive line is kind of meh at best. Their starting center is below meh, and their right tackle is a sieve. So, Aaron Rodgers, I really hope that you're able to drink from the fountain of youth and are extremely mobile. And he's always been really good at getting the ball out pretty quickly um, when he wants to. But again, that was when you had receivers like Devontae Adams, etc. I like Garrett Wilson. I like McCole Hardman. I like those guys. Garrett Wilson's probably the number one. Well, not probably. He is the number one in that offense and has the potential to be a top wide receiver in the league. Not quite sure he's there yet, but he's still very good. But there's nothing that really jumps off the page when it comes to offensive weapons for the Jets. And with Breece Hall coming back from a torn ACL, outside of them signing Dalvin Cook, who again would be a boon. I love Dalvin Cook. I've did it in multiple situations where I would love to see Dalvin Cook make his way to the Broncos and have that 1-2 punch of Javonte Williams and Dalvin Cook. I think it would be absolutely deadly. I think the same thing could be done with Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook if that offensive line holds up, though. That's the biggest thing. They've also had injury issues across the offensive line, especially at left tackle. So keeping them on the field is one thing, but them even being productive when they're on the field is a whole nother thing. So you can call me a hater, you can call me whatever name you want in the book, but I just don't see the Jets being anything like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the LA Rams when they got Tom Brady and Matt Stafford, respectively. This is not the same type of team, and they haven't put the same emphasis on the same places. When Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay and when Matt Stafford went to LA, they concentrated and ensured that he had a top flight offensive line. You saw the Bucks go out and spend their first round pick on a right tackle. You saw the Rams go out and spend their first round, or oh, my bad. At that point, they didn't have a first round. I think it was either a late second or an early third round pick, and they spent it on an interior offensive lineman. They prioritized protecting their older quarterbacks. That is something I expected to see New York do, and they didn't. They worked around the fringes and they made the big splash signings. They had a really good defense, but lost some key pieces to it, and I'm not 100% sure that they replaced them very well. So, to me, the Jets fans I'm trying to warn y'all because every red flag that I ignored a year ago with the Broncos is popping up for your Jets. I'm not saying that Aaron Rodgers experiment is going to be a complete and utter failure. I just don't think y'all are going to get the returns that y'all think you're going to get in year one. So to me, this just screams another team that's won the offseason the way the Broncos won the offseason the year prior, the way Philly won the offseason over a decade ago, Washington almost 2 decades ago, etc. All of these teams that win the offseason, 9 times out of 10, they lose the regular season. So I am going to put the Jets in that arc. Y'all can say it's more bulletin board material. Y'all can claim whatever it is you like. I'm just being honest and giving just a pure reaction to what is on their roster. They have some really nice pieces. Aaron Rodgers could go out and have another MVP-like season. Garrett Wilson could go off and catch 100 passes for 1,500 yards. You could have McCole Hardman go out there and average 20 yards per catch. You know, all of these things are possible. I'm not taking that away. This could be one of the better defenses we've ever seen between Robert Saleh's defensive coaching and the talent they have. All of these things are possible. I'm just saying they're not likely. So y'all don't be surprised to see this Jets team as bad as 0-5 when they meet or 0-4 when they meet the Broncos in week 5 in Denver. And we can see just how empty that threat of Aaron Rodgers was today when he told the NFL Network that Coach Sean Payton needs to keep his coach's name out his mouth. I'm sorry, Rodgers, you don't scare nobody. Period. Your hippie self, there's no fear whatsoever from anybody from you. Not from a head coach, not from a player, not from an assistant coach, or even an intern, dude. There's nothing scary about Aaron Rodgers, the quiet retreat, mushroom guzzling hippie, saying that he needs to. What is he going to do? Is he going to throw the ball at Sean Payton in the sidelines and go for an incomplete pass on purpose? That's stupid. Is he going to purposely run out of bounds before the first down marker because Sean Payton's there? Again, that's stupid. I mean, yeah, you might do something to Sean, but then your team sucks. Like, I don't understand where Rodgers was coming from with that comment, because he's not going to go out there and punch Sean Payton. That's for sure. Not saying that he's a coward or a weakling or whatever. It's just the amount of money that he would lose for that is unpalpable. So this whole back and forth between Sean what Sean Payton said was the truth. I know it hurts Hackett. I know it hurts Jets fans, but it's the truth. I just said it myself. Every team that wins the offseason typically loses in the regular season. There's a couple of exceptions, but again, those are exceptions, not the rule. So again, it could be as bad as 0-4 when they show up in week 5, or it could be as good as 5-0. But Jets fans really need to make sure that they're prepared for that 0-4. They're obviously prepared for the 5-0. That's their assumption. But they need to be prepared for that 0-4, because it is 100% possible, especially if you have a situation like what happened with the Broncos last year, where in week 1, their quarterback, running back, left tackle, etc., all got hurt against a former team. Bad things happen, especially when you're hyped up this way in the NFL offseason. It happens every year. I'm sorry, Jets. This just seems to be your year. So, since we're talking about Sean Payton and the things that he said, was he right in claiming 20 dirty hands in the Denver's 2022 debacle? And can he resurrect Russell Wilson? I do believe he was technically right. I mean, as a coach, you never want to give another team bulletin board material. This is why this situation right here is exactly why Bill Belichick is the way he is in press conference. It's why he is so milquetoast, is because he refuses to give anybody bulletin board material. You are never going to put up a Bill Belichick quote on your wall to motivate your team, because it's going to be the most mundane, just boring quote you will ever get. This is why he doesn't do it, because he doesn't want to ever have to deal with that moment if he does lose a game against a team where he said he would have said something like Sean Payton did, where he has to hear about it for months and months and months afterwards. And that is what Sean Payton has set himself up for. There's going to be a microscope, like I spoke about in my training camp preview for the Broncos on e5280sports.com. Make sure you go and check that out. That was just dropped right before this pod. So there is a blog for y'all to read where I go a little bit more in depth on the Broncos, specifically their training camp, some things to look forward to, some things to look for, and some expectations. So make sure you go and check that out. And I do touch a little bit on the Sean Payton thing, but again, to me, this is it's just grown men having a tit for tat. I think he was just tired of hearing the same questions and giving the same milquetoast answer. And so he finally just kind of let the truth out. Again, probably shouldn't have, but I didn't see where he just ultimately destroyed him. I mean, he said some things. He kind of teetered on going to scorched earth, but never really just laid in to Nathaniel Hackett and that former coaching staff. I know a lot of places and things have sensationalized what he said and kind of blown it up a little bit out of proportion. I will say that they've done a pretty good job keeping it pretty close, but there's some that have kind of blown it a little bit out of proportion and try to make it sound a little worse than what I think he meant it as. But again, this is why you don't give these quotes, because then it gives people the ability to run with it. So, and Sean knows better. This had to be calculated. I don't see this as being an accident. There had to have been something that happened that made him say this. Somewhere between when he last spoke to a reporter and this interview, something happened in there that got him riled, and he just couldn't hold it in anymore. So, was he right? Technically, yes, but should he have done it? No, I don't. I don't believe he should have said those things on record. I don't believe that he should have put them in print, but they are. They are. It is what it is. It's out there. It's done now. Crying over spilled milk never helped anybody. So going forward, Jets fans, get your panties out of a bunch. He didn't say anything that was wrong. He didn't say anything that was mean. He just said a lot of truthful things, and sometimes truth hurts. Y'all sold your soul for Aaron Rodgers. The Jets, plain and simple. They sold their soul, went and got Hackett after one of the worst offensive performances anybody has ever seen by any NFL team ever. It's not the worst, but it's one of the worst that we have ever seen. And they went out and got him for one reason and one reason only, to entice Aaron Rodgers to come to New York. It worked for them. It didn't work for Denver. I have a feeling why it didn't work for Denver. I don't think that he wanted to deal. Colorado is way too liberal. The majority of Colorado is way too liberal for him. I think he went to New York figuring that he could hide easier with that amount of people. The microscope is much bigger. I'm not sure how well that's going to work out for him. But man, it's going to be a fun early season to watch. And that Week 5 game went from interesting and intriguing to a must watch. If this isn't already in prime time, it should be in prime time, because at the very least, this should be a very entertaining game. And then the second part of the question, can he resurrect Russell Wilson? Yes. If y'all go back and look at what Drew Brees was before Sean Payton, Drew Brees was not the Hall of Famer Drew Brees that we got to watch and marvel at in New Orleans before Sean Payton. He was a decent to very good quarterback that had potential. Then Payton went out and devised an offense around his franchise quarterback and turned Drew Brees into a Hall of Famer. Russell Wilson was on a Hall of Fame track before he got to Sean Payton, but the similarities start with the year before Sean Payton got his hands on each of those quarterbacks. And their numbers are almost identical. Yards, touchdowns, interceptions, interception ratio, completion percentage, QB rating. I mean, you go down the line and it's literally within a point or two, a yard or two, maybe 5 to 10 yards, maybe, a reception or two or a completion or two. It's almost identical, even into the rushing yards. The injuries were almost identical. You had Russell Wilson, who had a partially torn labrum in his shoulder last year. Drew Brees had a fully torn labrum in his shoulder the offseason before he got with Payton. Drew Brees had shoulder and knee surgery in the offseason that he joined the Saints. Russell Wilson had shoulder and knee surgery. This offseason, the year Peyton joined the Broncos. So the parallels are unbelievably canny. And this is the coach that by all accounts, Russell Wilson wanted to begin with. So there's no more excuses. He has all of his weapons at his disposal between Judy, Patrick, Sutton, Dulcich, etc. Now, obviously, they got to make it through training camp, preseason, knock on wood. Hopefully, all that happens. But as of right now, he has no excuses. There's no reason they invested the offensive line. They invested in the defense, especially in the run game. So this is it. Russ is either going to bounce back or he's not. And to me, I have no qualms in saying that he will bounce back, that Sean Payton will fix him. So, that being said, Jets, looking ugly. Broncos, kind of middly. But one team that is looking up is the New Orleans Saints. They did some, I believe, under the radar moves. This is one of those teams that I think has really kind of sunk their way under the radar, making just really solid moves. They didn't make any moves that blew the socks off anybody. There's no major QB trade. I mean, outside of maybe trading, Peyton to the Broncos and getting that extra first round pick, etc. Those things were a little bit of a blockbuster, but they didn't do anything that really just kind of stole the headlines. They were able to draw in Derek Carr, but again, and technically was he a headline, but that was really because at that point, nothing else was going on. It was pre-free agency. He was the only real player that anybody cared to sign at that time that had been released. So yeah, he kind of stole the headlines, but it was kind of like de facto stealing the headlines. If him signing with the Saints and Rodgers being traded to the Jets happened on the same day, he would have been buried so far below. Most people wouldn't have even known what the deal was for. But those are also usually the teams that make a lot of noise in the upcoming season. I am not here to say that Derek Carr is the savior of the Saints. I am here to say that Derek Carr is majorly underrated. He's not an elite quarterback, but he is a very good quarterback that is very accurate and more mobile than people give him credit for. And I think with the return of Michael Thomas, the emergence of Chris Olave, they still got Alvin Kamara. I mean, obviously he's probably going to miss at least a few games, depending on what happens with his legal troubles. But overall, that team is absolutely stacked. They are one of those teams that was essentially a quarterback away. Now, they didn't go out and get a Rodgers or a Wilson or Stafford or Brady or anything of that nature. They just went out and got one of the more consistent quarterbacks that, believe it or not, has not been below the top 8 in the NFL in passing yards since he came in the league, since his sophomore season. His rookie season was whatever, we won't count that one. But since his sophomore season, he has been within the top 10 to top 8 of passing yards and passing yards per game in the NFL. So he's no slouch. Again, I'm not a Derek Carr lover that's just out here to sing his praises, but he is a quarterback that when you put the right pieces around him, he will win you games. And the Saints have done that. They have a insane defense. It's been that way for years now. You have a plethora of skill position players and a very, very solid to very, very good and even sometimes great offensive line. He has all the tools at his disposal, got a good head coach, good offensive coordinator. I really think that the Saints are going to shock some people, and I think that they end up coming out of the NFC South as the winner of that division. It's a pretty weak division, but I do think they come out and they do it pretty handily. I think they're going to win somewhere around 11 to 12 games, and they're going to win that division by multiple games. It's not going to be like a wait to the last week of the season to figure out. No, they are going to wrap that up, I would say, no later than week 15. That's my boldest prediction of this offseason and this training camp preview so far, is that the Saints will win their division and they will wrap it up by no later than week 15. At least 3 weeks where they can just kind of relax, maybe rest some starters, get some much needed R&R, etc. Just checking. As hi Trey, appreciate it. I'm not sure what as is, but appreciate you, bro. Love you. But let's go ahead and I think that's the biggest topic. Well, actually, one more. We'll talk about Joey Burrow and his injury with the Bengals. What looked like could have been a season-ending injury where he was carted off the field after just one practice in the Bengals training camp turned out to be much milder than they thought. Everybody assumed he had blown out his Achilles. It was a no contact injury where he went down and he grabbed his calf slash Achilles heel ankle injury or area. And again, had to be carted off because he could not walk or stand up. So it looked really, really bad. Well, as it turns out, it's a calf strain. Those are still dangerous. Almost every major athlete that has had a calf strain it's turned into an Achilles heel injury that ends their season more often than not, mostly because they get pushed back. I mean, you look back at like most recently Kevin Durant when he had the calf strain, then ripped his Achilles within a couple of days of each other because he tried to push himself out there too quickly. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. If you want to Google it, go for it. I'm not going to go down the list, but that's a good enough example. This is a dangerous injury, one that the Bengals cannot force him back. Um, they have to take their time. So will him missing all of training camp and the preseason be a big deal? I don't believe so because of the continuity on offense. This is the same head coach, same offensive coordinator, almost the same offense, starting 11 from for several years going on now, from offensive line to wide receivers, running backs, all that stuff. It's all the same. So they know what to expect with Joe Burrow. They know how he plays, their timings together. All of those things are great. If this was, say, Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis or Bryce Young in Carolina, that would be a terrible thing for them to miss in their first training camp and preseason and all that with their team. I would say that would just pretty much end their season. They should just be, set on the bench and left to learn because they're going to be so far behind the eight ball. They're never going to be able to catch up. In this case, no, it's not the same. This is Joe Burrow, a veteran on a veteran-led team with a bunch of teammates that know who he is, how he plays, how to play with them, what to expect, etc. I don't see it being as big a deal as so many people try to make it out to be. As long as he's able to come back week one, or even just give him a couple of weeks if necessary. If he's able to come back early in the season at full health, 100% healthy, no pain, no issues, the Bengals will be fine. Now, if it ends up turning into something more terrible, or Lord forbid he gets pushed back out there too quickly and that Achilles snaps, the Bengals season's over. This is going to be nothing like even like the 2011 Patriots where they were able to get Matt Castle in there and still win 11 games even though they missed the playoffs. This would be the end. That the AFC North is a monstrous division with the Ravens and Bengals and Steelers and Browns. They are all four teams that have at the very least hopes of a very good season and can at the very least are going to be a pest for any team that comes against them. They might not be a great team, but they're going to give you everything they got and they're going to make it hard on you. And all four of the teams are of that ilk as long as Joe Burrow is on the field. If he's not, the Bengals are going to be they're going to be sunned very, very hard, very quickly, and they will end up last in their division, probably with the number one overall pick, which would be actually an insane thing to think that you got Joe Burrow, that roster that's been to back-to-back AFC championship games, and then they get the number one overall pick. Whew, wouldn't that be an off season? But getting ahead of myself, I don't want to see that because I want to see Joe Burrow on the field. So let's all hope and pray that he gets back out there healthy and gets to play a full season. So let's go. We are at the halfway point. Appreciate those likes. Subscribe. Make sure you hit that thumbs up, like, subscribe, all those things, both not just for me, but for the 5280 as well. Help them grow, help me grow, help my pocket grow. Love y'all. Appreciate it. Make sure y'all sharing as well. That is the holy grail of everything social media. So let's go ahead and let's switch gears on off from the NFL into the Major League Baseball. And the trade deadline then again is on August 1st and ends at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So there has been a flurry of moves. Really had been nothing going on until the 26th. Last week, July 26th, when Lucas Giolito was sent from the south side of Chicago to the south side of LA, where we got to see that the Angels are not going to be sellers, as everybody thought they would be shipping out Shohei Ohtani, who's going to be a free agent and the absolute unicorn that he is, probably going to be the highest paid athlete ever, taking that mantle from Patrick Mahomes just 2 years after he signed his $500 million contract. I think that there's no way that Ohtani gets less than $500 million in 10 years. That's going to be the starting point for the most amazing baseball player we have ever seen grace a baseball field. And yes, I am putting Shohei over the likes of Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, Mickey Mantle, etc. I do not care. And this is not recency bias. I am an old head. I love some Willie Mays. I love Jackie Robinson. I mean, there's a reason we're 42, and that's one of them. There's a reason the answer is 42, and Jackie Robinson is one of them, okay? So it means a lot for me to put him above the likes of those guys. But it's just factual at this point. There has never been a better baseball player on the face of this earth. Not Satchel Paige, not Bo Jackson. This kid is an absolute unicorn freak of nature. The man is going to go out and win the Cy Young and the MVP, but not like a Justin Verlander, who was the Cy Young and MVP as a pitcher. He's going to win the Cy Young as a pitcher, and then he's going to win the MVP as the best hitter. He is the best pitcher and the best hitter in the entire major leagues. Hell, on this earth, he is the best hitter and the best pitcher on earth, and he's one human. It still boggles my mind. We have spent my entire life, I have spent being told that what Shohei is doing is impossible. I have spent my entire life listening about how the only reason Babe Ruth was because he stopped pitching and focused on hitting. Shohei has told all of those pundits to shut up. That just like in high school, if you are this good, you can also do it in the majors. Now, I'm not sitting here to say that he's going to bring in a wave of these two-way players. I know everybody, this is a copycat league, just like every other professional league. Everybody's trying to find their Shohei. You saw it in the MLB draft where you saw, I think it was a total of 5 quote-unquote two-way players coming out of either high school or college drafted in the first round. And everybody was talking about how, oh, these kids probably wouldn't have gotten drafted till the second or third round, or some of them not even drafted because they need to go to college and prove that they're either a pitcher or a hitter. But you have seen Shohei break down that barrier. So I do think we will see more, but we are not going to see a wave of Shoheis from anywhere, not from here, not from Japan, nowhere, not from the Dominican Republic, Venezuela. It doesn't matter. It's not going to happen. Because he is, again, a unicorn. That they're a rare breed, bro. You're not finding anymore. Let's just enjoy what we are watching. Let's enjoy this greatness. And I am so happy to see that the Angels have decided not to sell and have decided to keep him and make that trade like they did, where they gave up 2 of their top 10 prospects to go out and get a Lucas Giolito to match with him at the top of that rotation. So now they have a 2-headed monster instead of Shohei and a bunch of dudes. They now have Shohei, Lucas, and a bunch of dudes, which can be enough to win you a series. 2 top-of-the-line starters in the MLB playoffs is more than enough. As long as you have at least another serviceable starter to where you have 2 top-of-the-line starters and a serviceable third man, you can win any series in MLB baseball. That's all you really need. If you have more than that, obviously great. You're better than most. But as long as you have those two guys and then a serviceable third starter and a decent lineup, you have all the ability in the world to go out and win a World Series, especially in today's baseball where the parity is so much more. Um, and teams are so much less likely to do these sell-offs with the extra wild card. I mean, you see it with the Angels. If this was before the second wild card was put in just a couple of years ago, the Angels are sellers. Shohei's probably in LA or New York, which is, I mean, yeah, obviously he's still in LA, but I mean the Dodgers. I should be more specific. He's already in LA. I should say he'd either be with the Dodgers or the Yankees, or if the Mets were good, he'd have a chance with the Mets. But we've seen they're selling as well. So Shohei staying in LA with the Angels, and the Angels putting it all out there, going out there, getting Lucas Giolito from the White Sox, getting David Montgomery, another lefty from the Cardinals, to make that number 3 that I was just talking about, that third passable starter, and then getting a relief pitcher, Chris Stratton, that can help with the middle relief that they have an issue with Carlos Estevez going off and having the year of his life after all the struggles he had in Colorado. All the power to you, Carlos. I wish you nothing but the best. Another reason why I want to see the Angels go out there and go all in the way that they are. I'd love to see Carlos go out there and get some more playoff experience after all that he's dealt with over here in Colorado, and not even getting an offer in the offseason for them to bring him back when he's been one of their better relief pitchers in a long time. So, with all that being said, what is the state of the franchises? What is the state of MLB? I think it's in a great place. The buzz that's been going on around this trade deadline has been one of the greater buzzes I've seen in a long time. The buzz around baseball in general, with all the rule changes and stuff, has been better than I have seen in a very long time. So as much as we've ragged on Rob Manfred, and I would love to see another commissioner because I still don't believe he's the best for the job, this year he might be redeeming himself in the Dumb and Dumber kind of way. So, next up, are the Rangers the AL favorite after acquiring Scherzer? Before the fact that the Angels went all the way in, grabbing, like I said, Giolito, Stratton, and Montgomery, I would have been there right with you. The Rangers have looked otherworldly. Their lineup has power and speed and bat-to-ball ability up and down the lineup. You got Corey Seager proving that big contract was worth every penny. You have guys like John Gray from the previously of the Rockies is out there having a decent season. Nathan Eovaldi finally showing his ace potential and really taking over that rotation. And now he's with Max Scherzer, and so they have that 2 top of the line starters plus that third more than serviceable starter. I love John Gray. I've been a John Gray lover. That came out really wrong. I have enjoyed the way that John Gray plays baseball since he came up with the Rockies and was coming out of the University of Oklahoma. Let's fix that a little bit there. Hopefully nobody cuts out that last one. I'm a Gray. Yeah, let's not say it again. But are they the favorites? I think them and the Angels, as long as the Angels continue to play the way that they have lately, that made them buyers instead of sellers at the deadline. I think the Rangers and the Angels probably are going to end up battling it out for the pennant. If their trades work out the way I think they will, they're going to be the teams in the championship series vying for who goes through the World Series. I'm not comfortable saying which one will win it at this point, but I do believe that they're going to be the two in it to win it at the end. And then moving back over to the NL, we saw the Dodgers. They've done kind of the opposite of what we've been expectant of them over the last few years. They are still in first place, so it's not like they got to do a whole lot of tinkering. But they had some disappointments like the Noah Syndergaard signing, which they made up for by going out and trading him off for Ahmed Rosario from the Guardians, so that Rosario could be in a platoon there with Kike and Miguel Rojas at shortstop. So their moves around the fringes, as long if they can squeeze out of them the Joe Kellys and things of that nature that they were able to pick up, that they just seem to always believe they're able to squeeze out more out of players that are having a bad season. That if that's the case, then I could see the Dodgers again ending up in the championship series. Um, and definitely holding off the Giants. The Giants are only 3 games back. I was going to give my boy Quinn a moment to rebut me on this, but he's not here, so bah, can't do it now. I don't believe the Giants are going to be able to catch him. I like the Giants. I like what they do. They just always, outside of a year here or a year there where they might stink it up. Just I swear they just do it on purpose. That way they can get high draft picks. They can go out and snatch up a guy that they're going to turn into a Madison Bumgarner or something. It's infuriating as a Rockies player or fan to see this other team that always picks after them end up just like the Dodgers end up with better prospects, even though they're picking way after them constantly. But I digress. Despite the fact of how much I like the Giants, I don't think they have enough pitching to finish off what they started. I think they end up falling off at the end of the year and maybe not even making the playoffs. I think they have a good enough roster to make the playoffs, but they're just a few key injuries away from everything falling apart. So I know San Francisco fans are out there crossing their fingers that it won't happen, but you never know. It could. Um, and this is one that I'll jump on here is who would you like to see traded from Colorado to restock the system? To me, it's everybody. I I know that so many Rockies fans would hate to hear that, but the Rockies have been so lukewarm with either going all in or all out. It They are so infuriatingly inept when it comes to just being able to cut bait and move on and restructure and actually rebuild. They've never really truly done a full on rebuild ever. Like they've always jettisoned their best players, as we've seen with Tulo and Arenado and really just about everybody but Charlie Blackmon at this point has been shipped off for one middling prospect or another, and the most infuriating part is that unlike a Houston Astros team or what's another Cleveland Guardians team from a couple of years ago where they used those moments to actually go out and get good prospects. There's not been from any of these trades, not from the Arenado trade, not from the Tulo trade, not from the Todd Helton, or not, sorry, not the Todd Helton trade, but the Larry Walker trade back when he was sent to the Cardinals as a contender. Not a single one of these trades have ever brought back a prospect. Well, I'm sorry, one time. I apologize. One time. Matt Holliday for Carlos Gonzalez. That's it. That is the only trade I can think of any top flight talent from Colorado that netted them anybody. And it was a pretty decent job. Houston Street had a couple of good years as the Rockies closer, and we all know what Cargo did. One of my favorite players of all time, one of my favorite Rockies of all time. So that's one trade, but nobody that was in the front office when that trade was made is there now. None have been in the office for over a decade at this point. So I would just love to see Schmidt trade everybody. The Rockies are terrible. If I'm not mistaken, I think they got the worst record in the NL. I know they don't have it in the majors because that's the Athletics, who they actually just lost almost double digits to on Friday. They, I mean, they just signed a guy named Flexen. I know none of y'all know that name, so I'm not even going to say his first name or go in depth. But a pitcher last name Flexen, who was the pitcher that lost to the Oakland A's 11-3. They're just terrible. Let's see. Okay, so I guess the Royals are worse than them too, but I think those might be the only two teams. I'm just double checking to be sure. Yep, those are the only two teams right now. Despite the lottery, I mean, they still have a chance at the number one overall pick because of the lottery. when it comes to the MLB draft next year. But there's still that means that there's not even a guarantee that they get the third overall pick, which right now with the old rules would have slotted them in at. But there's a chance they could go lower, they could go higher, but it's more likely they would fall even farther, out of maybe even out of the top 5. So just barn sell it at this point. See what you can get for CJ Crone and Chris Bryant. And I mean, obviously, you can't trade Senzatella or Marquez because they're on the IL with Tommy John and other elbow injuries. But I mean, see what you can. Really, the only players I would like to see kept, and just for nostalgia reasons, and you still got to have a reason to go to the ballpark for the rest of the season, are Charlie Blackmon and Kyle Freeland. Charlie, because he's just been that homegrown talent that everybody loves, fan favorite. And Kyle Freeland, because again, he's the hometown kid. Keep people in the seats every 5th day to watch him pitch, etc. Really, those are the only 2 players I would not trade. And a lot of it would. I mean, I guess I couldn't say I wouldn't trade them. You would have to blow me away, which would be a dumb thing for a team to do because neither one of those players at this stage in their career are really all that great. I like Kyle. I think he can be better than what he's been, but I think he's pretty much shown us exactly who he is. A mid-rotation starter that's going to eat up innings. He's going to be a dog out there. He's going to give you, grit, determination, veteran savvy, all those things. But that's kind of just what he is. He's not the potential Cy Young winner that we saw when he was a rookie and a sophomore. He's more settled into what he's going to be. So those are my views on NFL training camp and the MLB trade deadline. We're getting pretty close to the end here. I do appreciate all the love that I've gotten, multiple viewers, multiple likes. This has probably been the best show we've had so far. So I appreciate y'all. I really do. So please keep that energy up. We will be back here on Thursday for the Answers 42, back in our normal time slot. It was finals week. Dogs ate a half a bottle of amoxicillin. All kinds of crazy stuff happened this week, so things got pushed back. Plus, I was, again, trying to give y'all, a little bit of a special here with some guests. Didn't work out, but I think we still had a pretty good show. Appreciate y'all again. As always, we are the Answers 42. We're here to talk about all things sports, so make sure you go down in the comments, you go down in the replies, leave some questions, concerns, whatever you might like covered on Thursday. I will be happy to take suggestions from the comment section on segments and things to do on the show. So I'm more than open to that. Make sure you leave them down in the comment section, retweets, whatever you got to do, wherever you're at. That's my Twitter right down here at the bottom. All other social links are down in the description. Make sure you click on them, hit all the red buttons, launch all the nukes so you can clear the way so we can bring you the news the way that you deserve, and that is to be enriched and not enraged. So for the for the Answers 42 media, or wow, I'm really jacking up this outro, ain't I? But anyways, for the Answers 42 podcast, I'm your host, Dan Weststein, for E5280sports.com and E52 Sports Radio on Twitter. Make sure you show them love as well as me. Check out the blog again that just dropped right before here. You can find that on E5280sports.com, as well as this podcast will be there. You can also get us on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever it is you get your podcast. Make sure if you do get them there that you write a review. That is invaluable. All these things are free for you, but they're absolutely priceless for all of us here at E5280. The answer is 42, and let's talk sports. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. And for the Answers 42, as always, don't question